Hello and welcome to the training on an annual review in Enrich. The first thing you will do from your screen is find the student that you need to add an annual review to. You will see that there's a pending IEP and we are going to create this IEP. So please click on Create. This student is currently 12 years and 8 months old. Enrich is going to share with you which IEP it recommends based on the fact of the information that it has within the system. As you are building the IEP, it is thinking for you. However, for transition, you will have to attempt to select that particular IEP. If you know the student is going to turn 13 during the life of the IEP, please change it to Transition IEP and click Next. Your option with this particular item is to create a new meeting for this item or select a previous meeting. So for example, if the child had been referred and at this point you were reviewing the evaluation data and there was an eligibility determination and you were moving forward with writing an IEP at the same meeting, you can select one of those meetings. You also have the option to create a new meeting. For purposes of our learning today, I'm going to select a previous meeting and move forward. It will populate the information to make sure that that is matched. You are certainly welcome to double check that information if you would like. Due to the fact that this is a transition meeting, it's going to ask who the student should contact if they have questions about this meeting. Please ensure that there is an appropriate contact in there. Again, I'm going to remind you that on the left you have a navigation pane and on the right you have an input screen. Currently we are in the section of student invitation. Now we're going to move to enrollment. That information should already show up based on other information that has been provided to the system. However, as part of the IEP process, if the student needed to move across a service district or school that is different than their home school, you would make those notations here. Then you will move into dates. Dates is going to show you when the initiating meeting date was. When is the start date of the IEP? It will always default to the next day. So depending on what you're doing, you may need to make a decision that it won't start until the first day of school. The end date can be 1 year from now, or it can be the last day of school. And you will need to review it before the end date of the IEP. These other dates that are populated here that you can't change were dates that were provided to the system. If you wanted to know where those dates came from and were populated from, you would actually click on that and it would open that information for you. Different from Accent Online, the consideration of special factors comes at the beginning of this process. Please note that as you read each question and you answer with the radio button choice, that you need to ensure that if you click yes for any of these questions, that you answer the question that is being asked of you. At any time when you input information into text boxes, you can customize that by using these features. You also have spell check. There is only spell check by text box. For the purposes of our learning, I'm going to click no through here. However, you may click yes depending on the student. Then you're going to move into the present levels of performance. The purpose of consideration of special factors is to make you think about those and they drive the IEP as you move forward. Here you're going to answer all of the students' strengths and in the academic and functional setting. You're also going to give the needs, and then you're going to also demonstrate how you understand that the disability affects their involvement and progress in the general curriculum. Currently at this time in the South Carolina Public Charter School District, parent and student input is not required. in this section. Under Findings, this is where you would put the current baseline data. So for this student, I'm going to create a reading goal. The date that I assessed this child was back on the 17th. It is always recommended that you have more than one, method of assessment when giving present levels. You would indicate your findings here. If you had needed a functional goal, you would also put that in there. Because we're working on a transition IEP, you must address post-school considerations. You would also address any post-secondary goals. For the sake of our learning, I'm just putting information in if required. The career cluster that they're going to be a part of. If specific transition services are needed, you're going to put that right here. If the student is going to turn 17, you would also indicate that there. And then you'll move into the goals section. You first must indicate how often you are going to report on those goals to parents. You're also going to choose the goal itself, when it's going to start and end come from the previous information that you filled out in the date section. You would write an appropriate measurable goal. As part of our annual review, you are required to do a probe and collect progress monitoring data. You'll put in your baseline score, your target score, and then how often are you going to be monitoring this. If you chose weekly, you can identify how often, every 3 weeks for example. It will create a graph to show you where your baseline is and where you are headed. This will be very helpful as you do progress reports. Please ensure that you read the progress reporting and monitoring, not read, but watch the progress monitoring and reporting section so that you understand how this correlates. Then you will move into Accommodations and Modifications. Please understand that while there is a drop-down list in this section, that sufficient evidence in the present levels should indicate why these accommodations are needed for the child to progress in the academic and functional aspect of their education. If there are no modifications, you click here. Please be aware that you need to give some specific instructions for accommodations and or modifications. Depending on the area of disability, the child may only need to receive a copy of notes in that particular academic course, or they may need it in certain courses. They also need to know, what does preferential seating mean? Does that mean in the front of the room, away from distractions, in the back of the room, away from noise-making machines such as air conditioners, things like that? The next thing you should notice in the annual review is that there's services. It's important to note in services that services reflect more than what we previously remember. It's not just the instructional service that the child will receive, but in this section you will also note related services. And you will also note the supplementary aids and services. This was previously in a different section. I'm going to model 2 of these for you. The first one is designed instruction in the area of reading. The person who will be providing this will be a special education teacher. It will be directly outside the general classroom, in a special education support room. The dates are already there for you, and then you will put in how many minutes a day they will be participating. It will calculate the time per week. We are going to add another service. The service is going to be a supplementary aid-in service. It is going to be teacher training and or consultation. The special education teacher will be providing this directly inside the general education classroom. The location will be in the general ed classroom, and this will occur 2 times yearly as the semester changes in January. Now, if you needed to add another service, you could. Notice that because of the type of service that we provided, it's not calculating any additional minutes, and it still has the total of 250. If a child has transportation services, you can describe this here, and it will create a separate document for you to provide to a transportation professional. You can also describe any directions, considerations, or delivery methods for special ed, related services, and supplementary aids and services. So here, if you needed to talk about what kind of training you're going to be providing 2 times a year, you could certainly do so. The next section is assessment participation. If your school provides a specific assessment, such as MAP, you'll indicate whether the child will participate or not, and any accommodations that they might need. If the child will not be participating in that, you need to explain why. As you move down further into assessment participation, you will need to review whether the child is going to be part of any NAEP assessment that year, if they are an eldest student. And then, of course, we have our pass here. If the child is going to participate in ELA with accommodations, then you're going to choose the accommodations that are appropriate to what you have already defined. In our case, that would be preferential seating. There are some additional questions in the area of assessment participation. One of them is, if they're going to be taking any alternate participations, have we informed the parent? In our situation, that is not applicable. Will the child participate in alternate assessment? No. I also did not choose oral administration. However, this is an important piece to note. The Office of Special Education Services in South Carolina has discovered that many students are taking their tests orally, and they would like to understand why it's necessary and what data drove you to make that decision. If you answer yes to this question, then you will need to ensure that you have answered and explained why. We did not select any non-standard tests. Moving into least restrictive environment. For charter schools, their school will be their school of residence. The child here will be receiving specialized instruction that supplements their general education instruction. If we had other options like a co-teaching class, or they're going to have regular instruction in the general classroom and specialized instruction, we would mark as many that apply. If you need to add one, you certainly can do so here. If there's any specific directions that need to be given, you would put it in this text box. Now we're moving into their participation with non-disabled peers. Due to them coming out and seeing someone for reading, that would typically take them away from an elective, and so that's what will be marked. If you do choose scheduled to be determined, you do need to explain. If there's other reasons that the child will not participate in these non-academic areas, you need to select those and then provide a removal justification as appropriate. The system will automatically generate here your bell-to-bell time weekly, and then it will take the time outside general ed that it has calculated in the services section and come up with the LRE. Currently, the child is inside general ed 86% of the time. Once you see this number generated here, you will pick the appropriate placement option. Once that's been completed, you'll go into extended school year. It's going to ask you some questions. You will answer these as appropriate, and then you're going to explain how you made that decision. If you need to add any, you can add them here. The decision in this situation is no. Please understand that if the decision is yes, it's going to ask you some additional questions, and then you will also have to go back to the goals section to highlight what areas are going to be worked on, and if necessary, rewrite goals for the short period of ESY. For our learning purposes, I'm going to select no. At this point, you would close this IEP that you have written, because we're not going to do a prior written notice, and I'm going to show you how to do this. If we close this annual review, you're going to see that it's sitting right here, and I can edit the draft. If I go in to edit the draft, all of our information that we have put in there has been saved. And say at this point we wanted to print the IEP draft to share with the team. Remember over here on the navigation pane where we had sections that help us input information? Now we're going to have documents that have been generated based on the information that we have inputted. You will select IEP transition. Notice it says draft. It will also say draft on the bottom of every page. Here you can view the IEP in its printed form. If anything is missing, you can go back into the IEP and make appropriate changes. At this point, if the meeting has taken place, we'll go back down to the prior written notice. We will complete our prior written notice. It's important to note that one of the pieces of the PWN that may look new and different is the sources that are required here. You will click on the text assistant, and there will be a requirement for you to insert this statement. Please insert that statement there. Notice if the parent or guardian did not attend the meeting, or if it's an amendment, a copy of the IEP must be sent. Will there be any enclosures? Since the parent did attend, we still are going to send them some things, and so we're going to go ahead and put copy of IEP, notice of procedural safeguards in case they need an extra copy. And at this particular meeting, because a child has moved through an evaluation, they may also receive a copy of the evaluation report. Typically, this may not always be the case, but some of these items may be enclosed. Because this was a transition IEP, it just wants to know, did the student participate in the meeting? And for our learning purposes, I'm going to click yes. I'm going to hit save. Now at this point, if we wanted to finalize our process, we could hit finalize. If we want to validate before we finalize, you can do that. I'm going to click on validate. Here is a problem that was found. How can you easily navigate to a problem that has been found? There will be a pink or red item on the left on the navigation pane. Click on that and it will take you to that section. Notice that I missed one question here and the answer is required. Click that answer accurately, save, and now I can finalize my documents. Please note that these are tabs of all the items that you have created by doing an annual review, and you have an opportunity to review them by clicking on the tab above. If you hit I agree, finalize the IEP, you will see that it will generate an option to print or close the IEP. Here on this screen, you can choose what you want to print and what you don't want to print. So you can easily do that by unclicking the check boxes. Once you've picked what you want, you can hit print, or for our purposes, we are just going to close the IEP. Now you can see that it's a completely different dashboard. The IEP has been done. It's not due until this date, and that lets you know when the re-eval is due. Currently, you can see that all of our services are here, our goals are here, and you can view the details of the IEP right here. Thank you for joining me for the annual review.